Yo ho ho! You and I are both at ringworm at exactly the same time. I mean, what are the chances, you know? If you ask me, my winter cabin is coming along beautifully. It's so cool now to be able to get a sense of how big it's going to be, you know, what it'll sort of look like on the outside, but especially the inside. Of course, it's not going to have any rooms or walls or anything, but just get a feeling for what'll fit in there. The next thing that I need to do, and I kind of need to do right away, is get some roofing on here. You guys saw in the last episode, I've gotten some water on this floor, even though I keep it tarped when it rains, and it's made some weird like mold, mildewy, black stuff on there. I tried bleaching it. Some of it came out, but in order to keep it from getting wet over and over and keep having this problem, I need to get the roof on. So the next thing I need to do is find some logs for the roof boards for the sheathing. I think at the end of the last video, hey, sorry for the roaring in the background, this intense static, but that's just the trees blowing around. It's a freaking wonderful day. It's like about 70, super windy. It's been like this for a few days. It's just awesome. But you guys saw in the last episode, I showed you a couple trees that you guys have seen cut down in other episodes, but I've got one log sitting over here that's like a maybe 12 or 14 inch aspen log. Might have kind of a bad spot in the middle. And then over here we've got these two leftovers. That's from the tree I cut there. I think I needed one more log to finish the floor in the cabin, so I've got these two left over. The nice thing is they're not super big and super heavy because they're way easier for me to mill, especially these aspens if they're only like 12 inches. I have no problem cutting through them with my chainsaw. And it's great that they're light so that I can actually drag them with the four-wheeler. I can bring them over here and I can use my log lifter to get them on the sawhorses there. So what's that? We got 3 logs there. That might be one side of the roof. I also just saw in my wood pile here, God, it's ripping. So noisy. I saw that I got I don't know what these are from. These must be the first and last cuts of the pine trees I used for framing. I throw them aside, usually bring them up here, and whenever I start the mill up, I'll just mill off that last piece. So you can see it doesn't really make a whole lot of wood in that one. But anyway, there's, I don't know, six pine boards. Ooh, those are my gorgeous cedar logs that I'm going to use for all my tables and my desk and everything. They're just, look at that, look at me. I stickered them, stacked them just like a real person's supposed to. So we're still going to have to find another few logs to finish the roof. I'd like to mill them all, like pull them all here, drop them, mill them all, go put them all on. I don't really want to mill half of it and then go cut another tree and, you know, just keep going back and forth over and over. So I just thought, I think we should go down here and look at what's left of this last pine tree, this huge one. I needed the lumber for the rafters, that's what it was, a little bit more. So I think there's still quite a bit left of this tree here. This is the one I flew the drone to look at. It had the split part way up and one side was dead and then the top was all dead. So I definitely haven't touched the bottom of it, but it's so big. I kind of want to save it just to do something weird with it, like try to carve an entire lazy boy out of one log, or I don't know. Yeah, look at the size of that thing. That is huge. I still have all this. I didn't mill this up because I can't get very many long logs out of it, but for the roofing it doesn't really matter. It looks like I could get maybe a 6 or 7 footer there before it curves. I don't know if you can tell just how curved and messed up this log is. And then it looks like from there maybe another 6 or 8 footer. Oh man, look at the size of this guy. And then I got enough for a nice long log there. It's gonna have a lot of knots in it, like tons of knots, but I think for roof sheathing it's not really gonna make that big a difference. I don't think there's any reason I can't use 2 different kinds of wood. I've generally used the aspen for flooring and roofing and pine for framing, but I have no problem using pine boards for roofing too. So I don't know, maybe we'll make one side out of aspen, one side out of pine, and compare and contrast over the years. Wow, this is gonna be really messy. Like this, I could get one decent log from there to about here, and then it's got this weird dip. This is all kind of garbage. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna cut it in 7-foot sections, and then I'll get one decent log from here down. That's like 9 feet or something. I don't know why this tree didn't plan ahead and do what it had to grow straight. I mean, it's very inconvenient for me. Yeah, you know, as I walk around it, it's really not millable. I mean, I'm not gonna get anything out of it. So, I don't know, I'll save this for later. Maybe I'll make something out of it. You know what? I don't think I'm gonna be able to get these out of here. I think this ground is all too soft and loose and bumpy and funky. I certainly won't get it out of here pulling it backwards. Might have to go get the Timber Tough log tongs. One more. Serious. It's definitely not going to cover the whole roof. My guess is a little over half, maybe 2/3. And I just said I don't want to keep going back and forth cutting trees and stuff, but I think I'm just going to mill this up and see how far it goes. Oh yeah, by the way, my sawhorses did finally give out a week or so ago, and I had to rebuild them. It's been on my mind for a long time to try to figure out like the perfect sawhorse. I don't know, I had a bunch of different things in mind and it just never really came together in my head. The sawhorses I've used for the last 2.5 years, I made in about 2 hours. It was in the winter when Tito and I first came out here, and it was just the quickest thing I could imagine to put together to hold logs off the ground. And you know what? I just rebuilt them. No different than what was here before. It just took a couple hours. It's just a couple of crossed logs. Those are, this time I made it all out of cedar, because the cedar poles that were, I think, in that end of the old sawhorse set were just fine, and this end had some fir or something, I don't know, and it all just like degraded. So I bet these last at least 5 years, if not longer. So it's just an X, and then I put the support on here just to hold them up, and then just connected them together, sort of like the other set, except these are way nicer. When I was getting ready to build the new ones, I went over to measure the old ones, and I thought, why on earth did I make them so short? Like maybe I was milling really big logs, you know, the log sticks up higher, so the first few cuts are up really high. I couldn't figure it out. And then I started digging the legs of the sawhorses out, and they were like 1.5 feet down in packed sawdust. So I thought it was the ground, it was so hard. But I eventually had to get the plow for the four-wheeler out, the snow plow, and just plow this whole area out up into that mound, and then most of that mound I've gotten rid of, just spread it around here. I find also that if you put kind of a sharp end on them, they don't move around as much when you throw logs on it. I'm sure at some point I'll invent a much more complicated set of sawhorses that'll probably fall apart the first time I use them, but I don't know, they seem to work great. Man, I kind of hate to mill this stuff with the bark on it, mostly because it just dulls the chain so much faster, but when these are fresh, it's a bear to get all the bark off of this. I think I'm just going to mill it with it on. When it really makes a big difference is if I'm not milling it at camp here, and if the logs are really big. Like the bigger the log with a given size chainsaw, the harder it is to mill it. So if you're maxing out the bar, maxing out the saw, and the chain's not like a razor, it won't even mill through this stuff. Up here, these are small logs. The grinder's right there. I can sharpen the chain in no time. So I think I'm just gonna mill it with the bark on. Yeah, this is about 6 feet higher than it was before. Wow, I don't even know if this is gonna work. Might have to shovel some of that sawdust back in here. Huh. Well, that's just for the first cut anyway, and then it drops down 5-6 inches, so I don't know, see what happens. That is some good, clean aspen right there. A couple knots, but overall it's almost unreasonably clean. All right, I won't bore you with a whole bunch of chainsaw milling. I'll just rip through these logs. If I find anything cool, I'll show it to you. Go ahead, go back to what you were doing. Got a few of those logs milled up. Made some pretty decent lumber. Maybe not the greatest, but certainly good enough for a roof. And then I came to this short pine log. It is super heavy and also super short, which is kind of a weird combo. Now that these are taller, it's harder to take a log on the ground, pick one end up and put it on there and pick the other end up. If it's super short, then it's just like, I don't know, it's really awkward to get up there. And this weighs way more than I can lift by hand. So I don't know if you can picture it, but with the log lifter, you crank it up and you can't get it quite to the top unless the log's sitting almost on end. I just couldn't figure out how to do it. I think what I'm going to do is mill it in half, just right through the middle into 2 pieces, and I can certainly pick up 1/2 of it and set it on the sawhorses. I'm trying to think if I've done this before. I think I've milled an aspen in half because it was just way too big for my mill. I mean, I don't have enough power in my chainsaw. So it took about, 3 weeks to mill it right down the middle, and then I turned the halves on the side, and then I could just mill them into half-size pieces. This log isn't that big, but there's nothing else I can do with it here, and I'm not gonna mill it. This looks really bizarre set at 10 inches. I never put it up that high. Yeah, this is a little log. Yeah, 6'5". That's the bare minimum of what's worth milling for a project like this. It is really good wood though, and a pretty solid log. It's 14 inches across, so you don't want to throw that kind of stuff away. right, last log. And also way too heavy to lift up. Well, this is kind of a bummer. See how much it picked itself right up there? It's the same on the other end too. I think this was the tree that was bent over. When I cut it down, it was bent over for like a good year. Just got some weird tension and stresses inside there. Yeah, wow, that's crazy. The good thing is that these are only going to be 1-inch boards, so they're pretty easy to nail down and like suck the board down flat. If you were making, you know, 2-inch boards or something, this wouldn't really be usable. Yeah, look at that. When I finished the cut, the whole thing just went pop, opened right up. Just ripped the wood apart. It really, this side really did not like that side. They were done being near each other. Oh, I was just mixing some more gas and I dropped the big gas can and it splashed all over my shirt. So instead of changing shirts, I'm just going to put my mask back on. Nothing, smells great. Check this out. Some more weird pressure in there. When I cut right to the end, it just popped open, like just snapped apart. Man, these red squirrels are making me crazy. It's this time of year when all the cedars have their, what do cedars have? Seeds, I guess? They're little reproductive pods. And the red squirrels go up the trees and the pods are in these big clumps and they just bite or tear the whole clump and throw it on the ground, and then they come, what are they going to come down in 2 months from now and clean it all up? But no matter where you are, there's one in a tree up above you throwing stuff at you. This got quite a rainbow in here. Some nice like brown oranges, really nice pinks and reds. And there's even, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, there's even a ring of real nice blue in there, like bright blue. You jerk. Did you see that? You see him throwing stuff at me? I'll have your head. Yeah, I see ya. See all these? They're everywhere. And if you look at the stems, they're not falling off the tree. They're all bit off, plucked off and chucked down here. If I didn't have other more fun things to do, this would mean war. What actually makes me crazy, this year, remember was the last 2 years, I had the big orange tent and I put a tarp over it because the sun was bleaching out the rain fly. And that giant tarp, man, it was every night. It was always in the middle of the night they'd be throwing stuff down on it. Every 10, 15 seconds, boom. And then wait, boom, all night long. I took up a sport, which is using the .22 rifle to shoot at the branches they're standing on. I would never break the branches off or anything, but I think it's just the vibration. They'd take off running. Of course, they come back half an hour later, but it's a pretty healthy American sport. Well, we got a pretty good load there. And we got like 8, 9 there, whole log there. There's another log underneath. And then this guy and that guy. So it's time to snap a lot of lines, do a lot of, I guess I'm gonna stick with the circular saw. I'm really kind of liking that. I mean, after all this time of cutting everything with the chainsaw, I'm used to using a chainsaw and the plane around the edges, but I'm actually finding this circular saw really fun to use, so let's keep with it. Man, I keep trying to get some of this crap out of here, but it's so stuffed full. That's what you get with wet, sappy lumber. My gloves are just covered in sap, my clothes are, everything. I'll be glad when this part's done. Oh, so satisfying. Look at that. All just crammed inside there. It's probably a good time to switch that out anyway, because I think that's all of the pine. I think we're on to aspen now. It's not really that much, is it? Huh. And I got 1, 2, 3. Wow. Only 3 aspen logs? That's not going to go very far. The nice thing about cutting these boards is they're all going to shrink up so much anyway that they don't have to be exact if the edge is a little bit wavy. I might notice it when I put these together, put the roof on there, but give it a week or a month or a year, whatever, the cracks are going to be huge anyway. So man, even though it's a good new saw and a new blade, it almost won't go through some of this. It's funny, it'll just cruise through, like you could almost jog and then slow down, slow down, slow down. Couldn't figure out what's going wrong, but it's just the grain and part of the wood. This stuff, I'd have a hard time calling that grain, but I suppose that's what it is. It's so stringy. When you get to a spot like that, it just stops the saw. You can back up. Sometimes you can back up and do it again and again, and it kind of clears some of that out, but it's just tension on the blade. Yeah, look at this. Crazy. This wood is so weird. I'm afraid if I do much more like that, I'm going to burn that saw up. I've only got a few boards left here to go, so I guess the ones that I can't get through I'll throw aside and get out the old chainsaw. Give me a break. That's what I'm talking about. I know what you're thinking. That's the channel I remember. That's what I've been looking for. Chainsaw and planer all day long. Is there a better tool than a chainsaw? I don't think so. There isn't. There's not. You know, if there was a world where you could only choose one tool, that's it. No matter what, just one tool, this would be it. Better than a hammer, handsaw, welder, you name it. Chainsaw. That's the only tool you really need. All right, I think I got everything ripped up that we milled from those aspen and pine logs. I'm gonna go ahead and dig through a couple piles and see. I think I got some random 1-inch scraps that we could pull out and rip those up too, because what I got laying there is not enough for the whole roof for sure. Oh yeah, we got a couple of old ones, old pine boards here. Ooh, that's a weird shape. That's a good one too. Super fat on the end. Let's rip that up. That's a pretty good haul. That's a third of a side maybe. I think there might be a few more under here actually. Got some more pretty ones. Oh, I forgot I had 2-inch short pretty ones too. Holy cow. It is awesome. them all ripped up. All I got left to do is take the draw knife to the bark side of these. You see how we snap the lines on the top side, the widest part of the board, so that you've got a straight edge here, but it often leaves a little bark on the bottom. That's the way to maximize the lumber, but I still have to go through and draw knife all these off. See, this pile's all got bark on the edges. Gotta make some room to bring my lumber pile over. Ooh, man, that cedar is nice. I only have 2 or 3 cedar boards, but that is some lovely stuff. Wow, that is quite a selection of lumber. I've done stuff like this obviously several times, and I still can't just look at a lumber pile and have any idea how far it'll go. So these are all, I think this one's like 10.5 feet. All the rest of them are about 12. I don't know how many boards that is, quite a few. And then I got this selection here from 6 feet up, like 6 to 8 or 9 feet. If I were to guess, I'd say maybe 3/5 of the way. Not quite 2/3, maybe 2/3, probably 3/5. Well, I'll start slapping them up there, I guess. One of the weird jugglings that you have to do when you build like this and make your own lumber, so that lumber is really important. You don't want to throw anything away, you don't want to waste anything, is figuring out how far apart you put any boards like this in framing so that you have the least amount of waste for the walls and the roof boards. If you've got only a board here and a board here, and your roof board comes across and it ends right here, you're gonna have to cut all that off and throw it away. But obviously the more framing you put in there, that's wood too that you've got to make. That equation in itself is just about enough to make my head explode. I think this is going to be good. I don't think I've generally done 16 on center for roofs before. Maybe I have. Oh, by the way, I don't know, what everybody watching the videos knows about building, but it just struck me the other day. I should probably explain what that means. 16 on center just means that from the center of one of these boards to the center of the other is 16, so these are all spaced out 16 inches. Standard is 16. 16 is probably what's in your house, so you could do 20, you can do 24, just depending on what you're building. I think a lot of times that the roofs are spaced further apart, so like 20 or 24 inches. I could be making that up, but I think that's what I've seen before. I'm not sure how exactly historically 16 was chosen, but since lumber is generally sold in like 4x8 sheets, like a sheet of plywood or a sheet of drywall, if you're 16 on center, then that does come out to be exactly 8 feet. Like you could go from one stud way down to several studs later and hit 8 feet exactly, so you can just put a sheet of plywood on. So you want to maintain that spacing throughout the whole project. In this case, obviously makes no difference. There aren't a whole lot of standards out here, if you know what I mean. Oh yeah, and the one other thing that I've said a whole bunch in this, if you've never done any building or remodeling or anything like that, is roof pitches. Roof pitches are some number by 12. It's a 5/12 pitch or a 12/12 pitch or whatever, and the first number is the height, and the 12, it's always by 1 foot. So if you measured this to this, it would be 5 to 12. And obviously the higher the first number, 6/12, 7/12, whatever, and a 12/12 would be a 45-degree angle. Woo! Got the measurement. One good way to cheat this, instead of getting up there laying both the boards butt to butt and then snapping a line on them, is just go in So this one, the end was 7.5. That's just the way the board was ripped, and it gets bigger as it goes down there. So that's 7.5. We can just keep going down here until we get to 8. 8's right there. So over this distance, 57.5 inches, it gets a 1/2 inch fatter. So if I go 57.5 inches on this one, right here, it should be a 1/2 inch smaller because these are going to butt together. This is getting thinner and thinner as it goes down. Pull it down to the end and then just make sure it crosses that one spot right there that we marked. And that should be the right shape. The nicest ones to use right now are the ones that don't taper much. So I can actually choose a size, like pick the short end here is 8 3/4, so I can rip the whole thing 8 3/4. And then I just have to find 2 more short boards, in this case, that are about the same width or a little bit fatter. And then I'm really not wasting that much wood. Clearly wouldn't do something like that with this one. That's like 5 inches on that end maybe. And that end is maybe 14, so I gotta match that taper all the way down, so find a little skinny one to continue it. This is usually how it goes though. I pick the easiest ones to puzzle piece together first, and then I end up with a stack of just bizarre stuff where I end up having to put 4 boards together and calculate the taper of each one to make them fit together. I can see how usually when they make trusses, if this was all made as one piece and set up here, these would be on the same plane, so this would come into the bottom of this guy here, and then you wouldn't have this sticking out, and then they just put a piece of plywood or wire, whatever it's called, like the metal mesh that pounds on there. I can see that would be much easier. When you put the insulation, it's going to go from there up here, and then it's got to jog around this thing and then kind of come into a different plane. So that's one reason you wouldn't want to do this. But I don't have any plywood. I don't have anything thinner than 1 inch. So if I was going to scab something on the outside, put these in the same plane, I'd still have a bulge on one or both sides. These being only 16 on center, minus this little bit, it doesn't leave my big fat head to fit through here very easily. Yeah, I can't get my hips in there at all. I'm up too high. So this is, I find this is better than measuring each one of these boards to fall right in the middle of one of these, is to set it up here, slide the end pretty close, and then go underneath with a pen and mark both ends. Another one of those tough cords that'll barely go through. By the way, I just finished one of the best books I've read or listened to in, I don't know, a long time. It was so fascinating, called The Secret Life of the Mind. That one you want to see if you can get. If you have any interest in how we think or why we think a certain way. Yeah, it was unbelievably good. Oh, I'm stuck. I might have to start getting on the roof to do this. Or I'm gonna have to get naked just to slip through this. But where would I keep my hammer? Yeah, I still get, when I've got water jugs like this and I got a pumper full of bleach here and it's sitting in a place like this, it makes me nervous. When I was like maybe 20 or something, my cousin and I went and lived out in the woods in a well, I guess it was like a 2-room cabin, an old log cabin, and helped build a big cabin, like one of those prefab ones where the logs all fit like they've already assembled it. They send it to you and you stick it all together, but it was out in the middle of nowhere in the woods. But we got the walls finished and started doing other stuff, maybe framing inside or something like that, and the logs got mildewed. So we were ready to spray the finish on the wood preservative on it, and we had to go through and bleach it first, just like this, with a pump sprayer. Bleach all the logs, let them dry, and then spray the preservative on. And I went out one morning to do the preservative, and the wind had just come up. It was like early morning, so it was kind of swirling around the side of the cabin that I was working on. So I only tried it for a few minutes and decided I came back inside because I could feel the stuff blowing back on me and getting on my face and everything. I went back, said, no, we'll do it a different day. And my cousin apparently went outside to do the same thing, and he sprayed a little bit and he got the stuff right in his eyes, the preservative or varnish or whatever it was we were spraying. He got it right in his eyes. So he came inside the cabin. It was just framed up like this. And we had buckets of water and preservative and bleach and stuff laying around, so he went to one of the buckets of water to wash the stain out of his eyes, and it turns out it was just a bucket of bleach, just 5 gallons of bleach, and he just took it and splashed it in his eyes. I didn't know about it. I was back in the little cabin taking lunch, and he came running in with his eyes just on fire, and of course that was back before cell phones, and yeah, I guess we had a landline there. There was no internet or anything. And I guess we must have called poison control or something, and they said just flush your eyes for, it was a long time, like 20 or 30 minutes, flush them with water and they should be okay, which is remarkable. You'd think just splashing bleach directly in your eyes, you'd have permanent damage. They said you should get over it. I think he said his eyes are still a little bit sensitive or something. Holy cow, that was terrifying. Can you imagine getting wood sealer and then bleach right in your eyes, and you're out in the middle of nowhere where you can't look it up? You can't, I guess you could call someone. Ugh, freaks me out just to think about it. That's why I know there's bleach sitting there, there's a little bleach over there, and there's my water jug, and every time I pick it up I go, oh, is that really it? Can't fit my butt up there anymore on the other side, so let's do this side. Yeah, I only got about 2 or 3 courses left. Gonna have to mill some more, unfortunately. This is so narrow sticking through here. I have to get my nails and my hammer out first because I can't reach my arms down afterwards. After I get up here, that is. It is looking pretty sweet though. It's a little bit of a barn feel. I like it. I kind of like seeing all the rafters in here. It'd be kind of nice to leave it like that. But it'd be chilly. I'm used to chilly, but the whole point of this is anti-chiltudnosity. I'm gonna leave a little tiny gap right here if I can. I might have to put the second course on and then cut it back just a little bit. Maybe, I don't know, an inch or something. And I've got a little bit of vent I can put on here. It's not really gonna vent back where the ceiling is just the 2x6 depth, but up here where there's a tiny bit of like attic space, it should vent that. You know, we'll put it on here one way or the other. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Now we just have to find some other logs to mill up here. I'm tempted to use those few cedar logs I have down there just because they're available. I just really have no sense of that big pile of cedar logs I have down the other side of the property there. I really don't know how far those are going to go to making siding for this, so I kind of hate to cut up too much cedar, but whatever, one way or the other, if I run out of stuff, I'll just have to find more lumber, so let's go mill that stuff up, I guess. You know, I've not yet ever done a building project and not ran out of logs, so we got 4 cedars here, and that thing's too crooked. That's aspen. That's a nice fat solid aspen log. It's only 5.5 feet long, which is kind of a pain to mill, but that's actually just the right size where you don't end up with a lot of leftovers when you go stud to stud. And actually, if I did another really short one, I could probably use a chunk out of this. I could take a 5.5 foot log out of that. That's really solid. Yeah, let's do that. I think just because it's so big and beefy, both those logs, and there aren't any rotty spots, that might be just enough to close in the roof. And you know, while I'm at it, I'll just mill up one of those cedar logs too. The cool thing about this is everything I'm doing on the outside is all 1 inch. So if I need to use a 1 inch cedar log or 1 inch cedar board up there, I can just throw it on. If not, then I've got it for the walls. Good plan. All right, break. Alright, I'm pretty sure we got enough now. What's that? 6, 8, 10 there. About the same here, maybe 8. I went ahead and ripped up several of those cedar logs too. Hopefully I won't need those. Oh, see? That's why I don't pound them in all the way. I forgot to cut this one. See, I'm just ready for a disaster all the time. Man, this thing needs some siding. When you really reef on this, you can feel the whole thing swaying around. It's kind of creepy. You really gotta pay attention when you're building stuff. Or not, you know, it doesn't really matter. I prefer to not pay attention. Just made this one come out just about right. There's like a inch gap here. Actually, yeah, there's a round on the bottom of the board, so it gives it a little more breathing room there. I'm just going to leave a little gap. Like, this is only just over a 1/4 inch or something, but it's a small space there. There's going to be a vent all the way down, and it'll be on both sides, so I think that'll be plenty. Woof! I mean, yeah. Good job, dude. Oh, baby, I am starving. This looks fantastic. I am so glad to have this almost done, this roof. It's the only part of building that I don't enjoy. I don't like doing roofs. It's kind of a pain because of the way I do it, you know, with homemade lumber, where you're up and down 1,000 times to make sure you don't waste anything, but I don't know. I like heights, I just don't really like the idea of sliding off this thing either. I think it looks fantastic though. A little squeaky till I get all the nails in there. And just enough space there to have a little venting. But I gotta get off this thing and eat some dinner. Big fat dinner with a lot of calories if I can scrounge them up. I think we've got some rain coming in the next few days, so hopefully I can get some tar paper and shingles on this, or at least just maybe I'll come up here and just put the tar paper on it. It'd be great not to get any more water down through this onto the floor and into that house wrap stuff that's under the floorboards. But all I gotta do is cut the ends off, zip them right down there, lay the tar paper. I've got some drip edge too, put that all the way around, and then start throwing shingles on here. You guys probably didn't notice, or you noticed and thought I was too dumb to think that far ahead, but there's no stovepipe, no chimney, no nothing coming through the roof here. That's because I found a heater for this place. It's going to be, I think, really sweet. I think it's going to work out great for what I want to use the cabin for. Should be able to set it on really, really low and leave it for days, and it'll keep going. I mean, you know, the downside is to fill propane, I got to get cans. I got to take them out of here every time one of them runs out. But I'm used to that. It's been, what, 2 or 3 years that I've been doing that with other propane cans. But the upshot of this heater is I don't have to cut any holes in the roof. Again, we'll see if it works. So let's go eat. You go eat too. You look starved, man. Are you hungry? You look famished. Let's go eat, and then maybe we'll meet back here next week. Put some roofing on here, and then get to the good stuff. Start milling up all those cedar logs all those cedar trees that I cut down, what, 3 months ago anyway? And they're just like laying there waiting for me and my chainsaw to rip them into beautiful siding boards. That is going to be really fun. Oh, and get to put the windows in. Come on back if you like. See ya.